Today's sermon, as you already got a hint of earlier, marks something of a milestone for me, or perhaps I should say it's helping to mark something of a milestone. I guess it's kind of predictable that when we reach one of those birthdays, and this is a pretty big one, we can't help but step back and do some reflecting on who we are, on what we need and want out of life, and on what direction or directions our lives are taking us in the future. Now, there's been a lot of this milestone stuff going on in our house the last week or so. You may not know this past Monday, Carol turned 50. Am I allowed to say that in public? And as you heard earlier and sang earlier, this coming Tuesday, I will do the same. Now, I can't help but share this. I always have a lot of fun in this time between our birthdays. And it's been especially fun this time because, I can say, hey, my wife is in her 50s and I'm just a youngster still in my 40s. I heard a hiss over here. I've heard a lot of that at home this week. I seem to be the only one in my household that finds this to be amusing. Go figure. Well, in any case, turning 50 got me thinking a lot about wants and desires and hopes and dreams for life. And it's got me thinking about this relationship between desire and spirituality. But that's not the only reason I decided to explore this topic today. The other reason is because I think it's fair to say that in quite a few religions, desire and spirituality have, how shall we say it, not been on the friendliest of terms. Or at least I think that's how religion has often been understood. Following one's desires, and by this is usually meant sexual desire, is seen as being the opposite of what it means to live a holy, sacred, or godly life. I'm going to try to argue, as you probably guessed from our readings and the meditation earlier, just the opposite. But before I do that, I should have a caveat here up front. Today's sermon is not going to be exclusively or primarily focused on sexuality or sexual desire. Thought I should say this after last Sunday when a church member came through the receiving line and jokingly mentioned that given what today's topic was, that they were really looking forward to seeing what the slides on the screen were going to be like. Well, sorry to disappoint if that's what you were hoping or desiring today. This is not going to be my annual sex sermon. I don't have an annual sex sermon. This is not going to be an adult version of our Whole Lives Are Owl class. I hope most of you are familiar with that. This is the comprehensive sexuality education program that we offer to our 7th, 8th, and 9th grade youth in the church. Not, by the way, that an adult class, which they exist, wouldn't be a good thing. I think it would be a wonderful thing. I want to just take a moment and say a word about this OWL program. This is not a sexuality sermon, but I want to say a word about it. Because this program, which we developed, Unitarian Universalism developed in partnership with the United Church of Christ, it is really something incredible. It is one of the 5 best things we do in Unitarian Universalism. There are curricula for all ages, and as I said, right now we're currently offering the one for middle school and early high school youth. And I can just say that having had both of my children participate in the OWL program, this is such an important and great, great thing. OWL teaches our children that far from being something that is bad or sinful or unworthy or worthy of shame, Sexuality and sexual desire are beautiful and natural parts of life. An owl helps our youth understand themselves as sexual beings, helps them clarify their own values, and yes, helps them understand the spiritual, emotional, and social aspects of sexuality. If you ever have questions about owl, or your kids maybe are approaching that age, talk to Rich Roberts about it, because he's in charge of the program that we offer. Several of you in this room I know have taught owl before as adult leaders. It is just incredible. Okay. So the spiritual aspect of desire, this is what I want to talk about today. Not just sexual desire, although sexual desire is certainly a very important part of desire. The desire I'm talking about today is, and of course here's where words aren't quite enough to pinpoint exactly the meaning, but let me try. The desire I'm talking about today is the longing, the yearning, the deep-seated passion that I believe all human beings have for connection, completion, fulfillment, and wholeness. This desire is found in the cry of the newborn to be held and to be loved. This desire is found in the yearning of lovers to experience their bodies and their beings as one. This desire is found in the irresistible urge to create and to discover that spurs artistic and scientific genius. And this desire is most certainly found in the soul and in the spirit, as it longs to love and to be loved and to connect with and be at one with something greater than itself. Now, this understanding of desire as a longing of the soul or the spirit stands in sharp contrast to how desire has so often been portrayed by religion. Think for a moment about that most famous, stories about the evils and negative consequences of desire, the story of Adam and Eve. In this story, Adam and Eve are experiencing the bliss of paradise in the Garden of Eden. But then temptation stemming from desire, in this case Eve's desire for the knowledge of good and evil, which God specifically says, don't go there. Eve's desire, Adam's desire ruins everything. Rather than controlling desire as instructed by God, Eve gives into it, picks the apple from the tree, and feeds it to Adam. And as you undoubtedly know, God gets pretty peeved, fills Adam and Eve with shame and guilt for their disobedience and sin, tosses them out of the Garden of Eden, and it's all been, not downhill from there, but it's been challenging. I guess it's been downhill, that's probably right. Now, while few religious stories have done more to give a bad name to desire, I don't want to leave you with the impression that this very negative view of desire is exclusive to the Bible. It's not. In fact, some version of the desire is the opposite of spirit or spirituality is found in one way or another in most, if not all, major religions. Let me give you one example. Think about Buddhism for a moment. At the heart of the Buddhist tradition are the Four Noble Truths. The first two of these truths are often translated, or I think I would correctly say mistranslated, but we'll go with the mistranslation first, as number one, all of life is suffering, and number two, the cause of suffering is desire. So just as the Bible appears to link desire with sin and disobedience to God, Buddhism is often seen as connecting desire and suffering and as calling for the absolute elimination of desire. Nirvana is a being, state, place of no desire. That's not really what it is, but that's kind of the shorthand version, I think, how many people have come to understand Buddhism, again, as being on the opposite side of desire. Now, what have been the consequences of these perceived condemnations of desire by so many of the world's faith traditions? Well, countless generations of believers and followers have come to view desire as something bad, as something to be ashamed of, as something to feel guilty about, and as something for which one will be judged, condemned, and punished, not only in this lifetime, but also in the next or in the beyond. So as I said before, that's that argument. I want to make the other side. I want to propose a very different understanding of desire, an understanding that sees desire not as a barrier to be overcome or eliminated, but rather as a gift of the Spirit, a gift that is calling us to seek, to yearn, and to be at one with the all-encompassing love and life force at the heart of existence. And the best way that I have come to begin to understand the relationship between desire and spirituality is to distinguish between two different kinds of or levels of desire. This is something I picked up from one of my professors in seminary, and she distinguished between what she called small d desire and big D desire. So let's explore that a little bit. Small d desire is rooted in our very human need for survival. We hunger for food, thirst for drink, yearn for sexual gratification, and so on. Small d desires are healthy and essential for life, for without them, we wouldn't survive for very long, and we would not be able to experience the best things in life: happiness, joy, and love. Small d desires are good and healthy if we stay in right relationship with them. And here's the key point. But staying in right relationship with our small d desires is easier said than done. You see, too often, those small d desires become not simply instruments of survival and happiness, but also the source of craving, habit, and even addiction. And as is the case with so much in life, I think those cravings and addictions are often rooted in fear. Fear of not being the person others expect us to be. Fear of being judged or condemned by those who are close to us or those who are far. And certainly fear of not living up to the expectations dictated by our culture and society. And once fear takes charge of our lives, small d desire can easily become all-consuming and the source of the very kind of suffering talked about in Buddhism. No matter how much we try to numb or eliminate our fear with craving and addictions, it always returns. We are never satisfied, never complete, never truly free to be ourselves and to be happy. So what do? Is there an alternative approach to desire, a path leading us away from the negative consequences of the fear and craving that lead to so much unhappiness and sorrow in our lives and in the world? Well, religion, as I said before, has offered one kind of answer, and this is to try and suppress and eliminate desire through guilt and shame. In this view, there is no such thing as small d desire. There's no such thing as big D desire. There is only bad D desire. Desire of any kind is sinful and a cause for judgment and condemnation from God and religion. When we follow desire in this view, we are privileging our own needs above those of God. Desire, following our desires, is the height of sin and selfishness. But this is not the only perspective that comes from religion. For there is also within most, if not all, of the world's religions another perspective on desire, a perspective that sees desire as not only being emotionally and physically healthy, but also as the path to understanding, experiencing, and becoming one with the creative and sustaining love at the heart of existence. This religious path of desire can be found, as we heard earlier, in the Sufi tradition within Islam. What a great story Rich shared with us. This path can also be found you may be aware of this or not, in the Bible. In an extraordinary book that isn't often widely read, except by those who are looking for the good parts in the Bible. This book is known as the Song of Solomon or the Song of Songs, which very vividly portrays two lovers who are longing for one another in the same way that God and humanity desire and long for one another. And this path can also be found in Eastern traditions like Buddhism, in the particular school known as Tantric Buddhism, which sees desire as the path to spiritual enlightenment. So when it comes to desire, religions have different perspectives within themselves. They contradict each other. What else is new? And that leads me to the second kind of desire, what my teacher called big D desire. Unlike the voices of fear and guilt that so easily turn our smaller desires into craving and even addiction, big D desires come from a place of love. They come from the human heart. They come from who we really are and who we really and authentically yearn to be. There's a great quote from the British novelist D.H. Lawrence who said, "People are not free when we are just doing what we like. People are only free when they are doing what their deepest self likes." People are only free when they are doing what their deepest self likes. And the various mystical sides of the world religions I mentioned earlier point out our deepest self is indeed our desiring self, the self that longs for love, for connection, for unity with the oneness and the Spirit, and yes, the love that binds us together. For some traditions and for some people, the name of that unity is God. Others call it wholeness, fulfillment, or simply love. One of my favorite definitions, one I'd never seen before, of this big D desire comes from the Buddhist teacher and psychologist Tara Brach. Are you guys familiar with Tara Brach? Great, great writer. She's got a wonderful book called Radical Acceptance, and in this book, she says, she's got a great chapter on desire, and she says that, she points out that the Latin root of the English word desire means away from a star. So in this view, stars are the energetic source of life, and it is this aliveness that our hearts desire to connect or reconnect with. Big D desire is our yearning for that energy, that aliveness, that creative love at the heart of reality. As one early Christian thinker put it so well in theistic terms, the glory of God is a human being fully alive. Gosh, I love that. The glory of God is a human being fully alive. And how does this aliveness, this big D desire, manifest itself in our lives? Well, I think it's a voice, a yearning, a longing to be who we really are, rather than who or what the voices of fear and guilt, judgment and shame tell us we should be. Like that young girl sitting under the open sky from our reading, life is calling us to lean into and live into our deepest longings. Desire is at the root of what another great writer, the Quaker Parker Palmer, calls our inner teacher. A voice calling us to lead lives that are whole and undivided. Lives in which we, as Parker says so well, belong ultimately to ourselves. Lives in which we grow into our own authentic selfhood. At the beginning of this morning's sermon, I mentioned that turning 50 has inspired me to reflect on what it is that I desire in my life and what my inner teacher is saying to me. I mean, I could go on and on with this, but I'll give you the shortened version. I have to say that in this moment, in this particular moment, although I'm sure I don't fully understand what that teacher, what that message is saying, I keep coming back to a deep-seated need I am feeling, which I haven't done well in my life to this point, a need to savor and appreciate the beauty that is all around me and within me. To savor the beauty of my family, my friendships, and my relationships. To savor the beauty of our church community and our faith. And to simply savor the beauty and blessing in everything and everyone. As I begin a new decade of my life, I simply want to see and taste and hear and smell and touch and experience the beauty of all. That's what's stirring in my heart this day. So my question and my prayer for all of you is this: what is your inner teacher? What is your deepest desire saying and calling you to do or to be? Maybe it's calling you to grow, to love, to serve, or to create. Maybe it's calling you to live with more gratitude or to love more fully or completely. And maybe it's calling you to simply listen and to follow the spirit of life and desire, a spirit that lives in us and among us, a spirit that calls us to be our deepest selves, our best selves, our authentic selves. So listen for that spirit. Listen for the voice of desire. Let it be your guide and your inspiration. For there is beauty in your desires. There is truth in your desires. May they bring you joy and laughter. May they keep you singing and dancing. And may they always lead you to love and delight. Thank you so much for listening this morning. It was a privilege to be able to share this time with you. Blessed be.